report, Primordial, ALLATRA, Physics. Part 1. Historical background. Atoms. The doctrine about great emptiness, about discrete, faltering structure of matter, indivisible particles, was known to people in different epochs and cultures. In remote antiquity, it was integral and reflected spiritual and material principles of the world and man. The more this knowledge passed through a prism of consumer egotistical thinking, political and religious fanaticism, the more initial essence was lost, and distortion and misunderstanding in fundamental principles were brought in. For example, in the East, people know about indivisible particles from the earliest times. People had the view that the world consists of great emptiness, grains, due to the spiritual knowledge that existed for thousands of years before the time when, according to modern views, the founder of atomism, ancient Greek philosopher Democritus, popularized in Greece the teaching, which was known in the East, about existence of the smallest invisible particles of which all surrounding subjects consist. These fundamental, indivisible particles were, in ancient times, called atoms. The ancient understanding of atom as the foundation of the universe is qualitatively different from the modern understanding in which atom is called only the smallest part of a chemical element. It is known that the ancient Greek word autonomous means literally indivisible, that is, a particle which cannot be divided into smaller parts. This concept came to ancient Greece from the East. For example, in ancient India there was a word, atman, also atma, to denote one and indivisible. If we translate the word Atman from one of the most ancient languages, Sanskrit, it was initially used to denote concepts of non-material character, the soul, the divine essence, world's spiritual nature, eternity. The concept of Atma was generally used in the theory explaining the structure of the whole world from macro to micro objects. In Sanskrit, there is also such a concept as Anu. The word Anu, atom, is a title of the supreme creator, Brahma. The word Brahma, translated from Sanskrit, means sacred power which gives effect, which is said to be the smallest atom as well as the unlimited, all-encompassing universe, meaning that everything consists of it. In Hinduism, Brahma is the unknowable principle of the universe, from whose essence everything originates and everything comes back to it, eternal, without beginning and end. In the archaic forms, Brahma was also the initial highest god, who is responsible for acts of creation, preservation and destruction of material aspect of all things. Ancient people of Mesopotamia, residents of Sumer and Babylonia, consider Anu the highest supreme god, honoured from the earliest times. Initially, he was connected with the goddess Ki. In the East, India, China, Japan, there is a term, Ki, which is still used to denote energy. Ancient Egypt. One of the most ancient gods of first creation in Egyptian mythology has the name Atum. Ra Atum. It is interesting that these words sound like that according to interpretations of translators. In fact, we know only that in the ancient Egyptian language, vowels were not reflected in written form. The word atom was represented only by the signs of consonants. We know from mythology that atom symbolized initial and eternal unity of all things, that he originated from himself, from primary chaos in the form of a snake. The image of a snake in motion, as a rule, in ancient times, denoted a wave structure or a spiral. In the sacred book of ancient Egyptians, which scientists nowadays conventionally named Book of the Dead, in chapter 175, it is mentioned that Atum tells god Osiris about the end of the world, that all he had created, again he would destroy, and he himself, again, would turn into a snake. The creating hand of Atum is Set, the greatest among those who come. It is one of the first ancient goddesses mentioned in ancient Egyptian mythology, the foremother of all gods. She was identified with the sacred tree of life and death. In ancient Egyptian art, she was represented as a woman with the ALLATRA sign, a circle and a half moon.